So while the candidates in Georgia are battling for the seats in Washington, Capitol Hill is gearing up for a fight over the electoral college results tomorrow. Nancy Cortez reports.
This is about the integrity of our elections.
Missouri Senator Josh Hawley cheered on a growing movement last night. Republicans who plan to contest the results tomorrow without evidence of fraud.
I believe there are serious questions with respect to the presidential election.
Despite attempts by Senate Leader Mitch McConnell to talk them out of it, at least 13 GOP senators have joined the cause, including Georgia's Kelly Loeffler, who spoke last night at a rally with the president on the eve of her special election.
I will object to the electoral college vote.
The effort has dismayed some Republicans, like Ohio's Rob Portman, who noted that not a single state found evidence of fraud or irregularities widespread enough to change the result of the election. Another Republican, West Virginia's Shelley Moore Capito, warned that refusing to count a state's electoral votes in the absence of such evidence would disenfranchise millions of American voters. Kevin Kramer of North Dakota agreed.
I come from a red, small state. I don't want to have our votes overturned by other members of Congress from other places. I don't see in the Constitution where we even actually have that authority, quite honestly.
But President Trump slammed Republicans like him yesterday, dubbing them the Surrender Caucus.
People will remember the people that don't support us.
He even upped the pressure on his own vice president, who will preside over tomorrow's joint session of Congress.
I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much.
Mr. Pence made it clear he won't disappoint.
We'll have our day in Congress. We'll hear the objections. We'll hear the evidence.
But Vice President-elect Kamala Harris argued none of it will change the outcome.
Let me just tell you something. We're going to be inaugurated, period.
I know you're going to be inaugurated, but when you see what...
More than 300 members of the National Guard have now been activated in anticipation of big pro-Trump rallies here in Washington tomorrow. And all D.C. police officers will be on duty as well, Anne Marie, because they are expecting tens of thousands of people in the streets.
So, Nancy, you mentioned these pro-Trump rallies, which the president has encouraged via his Twitter account. We've heard about an arrest of the leader of the Proud Boys on his way back to Washington, D.C. There are these planned objections. So, there's been a lot of conversation about how politicians are reacting to what the president is doing, what other members of the Senate, House are doing. But what about voters? I mean, representatives typically don't do things that will make their position more insecure with their constituents. Are voters supporting this behavior?
Well, definitely Republican primary voters in large part are, and that is a big consideration for Republican lawmakers who are jumping on board here. They realize that President Trump is still broadly popular with that base, and so what they're counting on is that they'll be rewarded by those voters, that perhaps it'll enable them to avoid a primary challenge in their next election, and that at the same time, it won't do too much to turn off moderate or independent voters. It's a really tricky calculation, and you can see Republicans making this calculation in real time. Sure, there are some of them who truly believe these conspiracy theories that there was widespread fraud, and that's why they're doing this. But for the most part, these are Republicans who are making a political calculation that it behooves them to stand by the president this one last time, and maybe it's not the last time, we don't know, even as Republicans, other Republicans try in vain to talk them out of it. So there's a really big schism that has erupted within the Republican Party, and that's going to make tomorrow's electoral college certification even more fraught, the fact that you've got a party that is basically fighting with itself.
And we've been talking all morning long, of course, about these Senate runoff races in Georgia and how the balance of power could be determined by the outcome of this race. But the I mean, we're talking immediately, not just down the road. I presume that whoever wins will have to sort of get on a plane and head straight to Washington, D.C. Kelly Loeffler now says that she will support efforts to contest election results. You know, that increases, I would think, the impact of her race.
Sure, and she has all along clearly decided that her best strategy is to hug the president as tightly as possible, try to gin up excitement among his base, and that continued last night when she became the 13th Senate Republican to announce that she too is going to challenge the electoral results. She's the only one of the 4 who are running today in Georgia who has the opportunity to participate tomorrow. She is still a sitting senator because she was appointed to that seat a couple of years ago when Johnny Isakson retired early, and so she remains in the seat until either she wins re-election and it's certified, or she's defeated and replaced by Raphael Warnock. There's no chance of him being seated by tomorrow because Georgia has to certify its election results first, which, by the way, took 17 days after the presidential election back in November. So he's a non-factor. Senator David Perdue, who's running for re-election, technically is not a senator right now. His term ended on January 3rd. And so until he either wins re-election and gets sworn in again or gets defeated and is replaced by John Ossoff, Georgia doesn't have a second senator here in Congress right now. And so that's all a very complicated way to say that there is at most one Georgian who's going to be involved on the Senate side tomorrow, and that is Kelly Loeffler.
So speaking of tomorrow, I mean, what will this look like? This is not part of the process that I think typically many people pay very much attention to. Right. Could this drag on for hours? How does it unfold?
There's a very good chance that it will drag on for hours. So the process starts in the afternoon, and if there were no objections, it might last about 45 minutes to an hour. It is a joint session of Congress. Basically, Congress's job is to count. It's very simple. They're getting these electoral college results from all over the country. We already know that President-elect Biden won with 306 electoral votes, but basically this is a ceremonial process where each state is and its electoral votes are read out loud, and Congress certifies it, and that's that. It's presided over by the vice president. That is also traditional, but as you pointed out, normally that's a formality. However, when at least one senator and one House member objects to one or more states' results, then the whole process stops. The House and the Senate go back to their individual chambers and they debate this for up to 2 hours and then hold a vote. And that can happen many times. The organizers of this challenge say that they want to challenge at least half a dozen states, battleground states that were won by President-elect Biden. So if you just do the math, if there is a 2-hour debate 6 times, you're looking at the possibility that this drags on for 12 hours or even more. Now, what we don't know is whether this will kind of fizzle out after the first couple of challenges, because we do know that Republicans don't have the votes to throw out the electoral college results in any particular state because they don't control the House, so they don't have the numbers there, and only 13 out of 52 Republican senators currently support this move as well. So they don't have the votes to do anything but drag this out. And so there'll be a lot of drama. There'll be a lot of tension potentially in the streets of Washington, but it will not change the fact that President-elect Biden is going to be sworn in on January 20th.
Man, by Wednesday afternoon, I think we're all going to be asking, is it Friday yet? Because these next 48 hours are going to feel like 2 weeks.
This is one of those times that I really wouldn't mind having a cot here at the Capitol.
I can totally understand that. Hey, Nancy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.